So can you give me 3 predictions for the next 5 years?
Sure. Um, you are going to see agencies becoming even more holistic in terms of their approach, and you will see digital video investment groups, which have been talked about a lot over the last 3 years. You've had agencies make a lot of announcements that we're going to have digital video investment groups. Their money has still been focused within television, but what you're going to see is the quality places where video can be distributed is going to become ubiquitous, whether again it's at gas station, it's online, it's on television, it's in the theater. That's going to be just the normal course of action. You're going to see, I think, a very different world of social media. There are a lot of issues with privacy that I think you're going to see some people pulling back. The Facebooks of the world are going to continue to grow, but they're also, I think, going to take a different face in terms of how marketers interact with them. And we're seeing a little bit of that today, how marketers are using them. But I think there's going to be a lot more connections between networks like ourselves and the Facebooks and the Foursquares and the Google Latitudes of the world. All these things are going to be connecting a lot more as we really drive, think globally but act locally. That's why I think we really fit very well within that mix of think globally, act locally, because we can target so specifically. And that's really a big help for marketers. In terms of the third prediction, well, I think that consumers will continue to have more control over the media they consume, and I think it's really going to skyrocket. I think you see addressable television itself is going to be growing, and that's going to be very important on how people use that. And again, the connections between different options on how consumers consume media. And I think you're going to see a continued and far more rapid decline of the effectiveness of traditional television. Essentially, event television, whether it might be the Super Bowl or the Oscars, is great. And it's been huge for marketers, and that continues to grow, and we continue to see great numbers on that. But most other programming is DVR ready, and most programming will be fast forward, it will be skipped, people will control more. And that's why networks like ourselves, I think, are going to have a huge future.
So what would you say is the future of television, particularly broadcast, and particularly like next year or so when we have internet-ready televisions?
Yep. The future of broadcast is that it's not just on your couch. The future of broadcast television is quality programming, which I think we have seen the networks really step up their game. But there's a lot of networks now. What do you consider an A&E? What do you consider an HBO as they put new shows on all the time? So you're going to see a continued proliferation of great programming. And what networks are going to have to do is figure out where are the places that they can get their programming in front of consumers. We are the only digital place-based, out-of-home, away-from-home television, whatever category someone wants to put us in, network where you can get ESPN. ESPN has realized that we're a great place to get their messaging, to get their product out in front of consumers, so then they can go home and they can watch it later in the evening. And I think you're going to see networks really think deeply about how they integrate online more, how they integrate with networks like ourselves. So again, it's going to be broadcast content is not going to go away, but the network share is going to continue to go down, and it's going to be distributed more, again, as internet television, as addressable television really proliferates, and networks like ourselves.
So I'm thinking there are many places to get digital out there. There's supermarkets, there are gas stations, there are airplanes, there are waiting lounges, whether you're in the doctor's office.
Sure.
Or so how, as a group, are you forming some kind of connection with other like in-place digital companies?
That's a really interesting question. There are organizations that are out there that we've participated in the past that are trying to aggregate all of the digital platforms together, television that happens to not be in the home. I believe that there's a handful of platforms. I would say cinema, I would say gas, and air may be another one that you mentioned, that really kind of stand alone as networks like a HBO or an NBC or an ESPN. And then there are a lot of networks that kind of fall into maybe the second tier cable ones that might aggregate together a little bit more. we have our own very distinct value proposition. We have our own reason for being. And we'll do things together. Nielsen has tried to aggregate them together in their fourth screen report, which came out recently, taking the networks all the networks in the digital space that they measure and trying to aggregate together to paint one picture of how large the group is. I think there's some pros to that. It's nice to say that there's a lot of impressions that are all over the place, but you buy things like gas for a very different reason that you might buy something that might be in the elevator or that might be in a supermarket. Just like you buy certain programming on cable, you buy sports for a certain reason. You buy your A&Es or your history channels of the world for a certain reason. While we're all trying to reach that elusive 18 to 49 adult, whatever the number might be today that people are trying to really focus on, certain people do that better or not. What's really great about gas in terms of the reach audience, our audience by definition is concentrated in that 18 to 49 target. People under 18 don't drive. And people that are older, people don't drive as much. So we are really a place where marketers, as they're looking at their broadcast mix, can find that elusive 18 to 49 audience that's basically fast forwarding through their ads at home.